I'm going to take a moment to be real in this video, probably more real and personal than I've ever been. I still plan on writing a more critical analysis comprising all of my thoughts on Blue Reflection, good and bad, after I finish the game. But I wanted to take a moment to take a stab at putting to words why this game seems to have a sort of ineffable appeal for me. While the writing doesn't always live up to what it aims to do, I think the subject matter of Blue Reflection is a large part of what makes it so special. While the game is ultimately about kick-ass magical girls saving the day, the game's narrative draws us into that world through Hinako Shirai, aka Hina-chan, a high school girl who has only just resumed attendance at Hoshinomiya Girls High after a traumatic knee injury that forced her to withdraw as a competitor from a prestigious ballet competition. Pause. It's important to mention here that this all-girls high school has two tracks, one for ordinary students and one for exceptional students who excel at one thing or another. For Hina-chan, it was ballet, and prior to her injury, she was on the exceptional student track, and from what we can glean from classmates like Sadasa, she was one of the best young dancers around. What's interesting about our introduction to Hina-chan as protagonist is the fact that, in very much an Odyssean move, we encounter the underwhelming husk of Hinako. We don't first see her at her peak ability or at the climax of the tragedy. We drop in after the dust has settled and she has finally mustered every little bit of resolve she can to resign herself to an unexceptional life. That's pretty much all the context I want to provide in this video because I want to transition here to why I think this is one of the most compelling and relatable places to start a video game narrative. As I considered Hina-chan's particular circumstances, my mind gravitated toward two central components: talent and high school. The latter encompasses a period of time in many of our lives where we're trying to find exactly who we are and aspire to be in this world, while the former represents an actionable means to achieve that. While we muddle our way through the unexpected, seemingly relentless humiliations of puberty, the bewilderingly and suddenly more complex interpersonal relationships, the at times unfair societal and academic expectations, and so much more, we're desperately searching for a place where we belong, where we can securely derive a sense of worth and feel externally validated in our own estimation. In this necessarily turbulent formative time, we try to forge an identity representative of how we want to be seen by others. As mentioned, one way we get there is via what we're good at. But why? If we put talent under the microscope, perhaps we can start to formulate an answer as to why that is such a necessary component in identity formation. What we crave, what all humans crave, though we feel it so much more acutely in adolescence, is recognition. To be seen as worthy in the eyes of another. Don't see me as the kid who just couldn't grasp high school physics. See me as the kid who took home first prize in the boys' solo singing competition. As we mature and enter adulthood, we realize the value of, and more importantly, need for another seeing and accepting all of us, faults and all. If we enter it honestly, marriage is a perfect example of this. After all, you can't hide your true self forever in a relationship that intimate. But when we're still trying to figure out who we are, talent represents something tangible and, crucially, it's often something that an adult recognizes in us and calls attention to. This is such an important part of the picture. During a time when we're drowning in a sea of self-doubt and insecurity, having an adult in a position of authority there to tell us that there is something valuable in us is, well, invaluable. Or, at the very least, I can say it was for Hina-chan and for me. But Blue Reflection's narrative takes the contemplation of talent and identity formation to its inevitable end. All things eventually fall apart. Beauty fades, skill deteriorates, the mind dulls. In a much more natural regression over the course of a lifetime. As someone who's only a third of the way through that, I'd imagine that we learn through much pain and introspection to accept those facts as gracefully as we can. But what happens if what seems so integral to making you, you, is ripped from you in an instant at the very moment when your hopes burn their brightest? How would you even begin to cope? And would you have the strength to start all over again in, gasp, high school? For many reasons that become much more obvious again when we mature into adulthood, putting all our identity eggs into the talent basket is such a precarious and fraught position to put ourselves in. We are so much more than the best we have to offer the world, and if we aren't, I think we at least have to believe that lie to get through the unsolicited mandate to live. You may not be the next literary genius, but you still have something to say. You may not sing like Josh Groban, but the song in your soul could still be what someone desperately needs to hear. Throughout a good chunk of the game, Hina-chan is laser focused on the dangled carrot in front of her of getting her ability to dance back if she defeats all the Sephiroth with Yuzu and Lime. She is so myopic that she totally misses the value her emotional intelligence and compassionate heart have for the girls around her who are just as insecure and scared shitless as she is. I see a lot of myself in Hina-chan. Though I didn't suffer an injury that took me out of the game in the flash of a moment, high school was challenging enough for me as someone with social anxiety and as someone who had to transfer high schools halfway through and start all over, and my identity as a singer was my crutch. Though Hina-chan could no longer seek refuge in her talent, mine was the double-edged sword that got me through it all. An adult in my life made me feel special, made me feel like I had this rare talent, and that meant the world to me. My anxiety and just general insecurities made me feel so uncomfortable just being in a room with other people. Even though I didn't feel equipped to deal with my anxieties during the school day, I had something I was remarkably good at. Mysteriously too, all of the anxieties of existing vanished when I was on stage in a musical or doing a regular vocal performance. I felt so natural and uninhibited, and though, as I said, my talent wasn't ripped away from me in an instant, I said singing was a double-edged sword for a reason. Growing up is learning that we're more than our talents. It's a healthy realization to come to that makes us more resilient, happier people. It's a realization that most of us come to under normal circumstances. Most of us. But not me and not Hina-chan. She endured the trauma of a life-altering injury and was immediately confronted by the very real limitations of her body. I endured the trauma of a life-altering injury to the mind. I'm not going to go into the gory details because I don't think this is the forum for that. Let's just say that there's a risk involved in seeking validation and recognition from an adult in a position of authority. It's something we need as children to grow and become confident and independent, but it relies on the adults in our life not abusing or overstepping that authority. And that's as personal as I want to get about that, but I'll leave it with this. It has taken me over 10 years of therapy to learn what Hina-chan is forced to come to terms with over the course of the game. And it leaves me to wonder if I wouldn't be in a much more stable place had the metaphorical rug simply been taken out from under me rather than what did actually happen to me. I guess there's no real point in dwelling on what ifs. What I love about Blue Reflection is its focus on a relatable protagonist who is going through a near universal situation, the fraught quest to form an identity in high school. Though some of the other elements of the plot and her unique situation are certainly outlandish and/or exceptional, God, I wish magical girls were real. Hina-chan's very real obstacles she's trying to overcome ground us in a narrative that resonates. From the nuts and bolts of gameplay to the writing, the game isn't perfect, but it's human, which is so much more important. Cheering Hina-chan on through the course of the game is so compelling because we've all been there in one way or another. And though we're meant to be captivated by the dazzle of her prowess as a magical girl, I can't help but appreciate the quiet strengths she exhibits when not collecting fragments in the common.